Have you ever thought about how your emotional body affects your health? I know when we talk about holistic healing, a lot of people give lip service to mental and emotional health, physical health, and spiritual health. But have we really truly looked at the interplay of those three entities as we look at why people have period problems? Join me this week as we take a look at how important the emotional body is for physical expression and health.
Hi, I'm Adrienne Irizarry. I'm an Eastern medicine practitioner who is passionate about women's health and helping women live their best lives. My goal is to put you in the driver's seat of your menstrual health, offering period solutions for a symptom-free life. Statements made in this program are for educational purposes only and not intended as a substitution for medical consultation or advice. We do not claim to diagnose, treat, or cure any diseases. This podcast is inclusive and welcomes all gender identities. The focus of the program is on biological function, and we will use the term women throughout, but it is referencing physiological and social challenges for biology, not identity. Come as you are, I am happy you're here and welcome all performances of identity. I hope you find something helpful in this show.
Welcome back to another episode of the Reproductive Rebel podcast. So, in the past, if you have been listening to this show for a while, you know that we have talked about the importance of emotions in the body and that emotions are energy in motion. So I'm going to say that again. Emotions are energy in motion. And it's important to look at emotions that way. And we did discuss this in season 2 when I interviewed Dr. Emily Wilson, and we talked about how we hold emotions in the pelvis. But it's important to revisit this topic from a slightly different vantage point, I think, because we seriously, as a Western society, do not give our emotional body enough weight in terms of how it affects our physical health. Now, many of us are familiar with the fact that we really do have a mental health crisis happening right now. There were a lot of people that were affected by lockdown with COVID, and there is a limit on being able to access services. There are a lot of people who are out there looking for therapists that are struggling to find one. We really do, not to mention the stigma on top of it all. So, mental health is something that culturally here in the West, we're really starting to see the importance of supporting the mental side of the equation. But this is something that Chinese medicine has understood for thousands of years, that you really cannot separate the physical body, the emotional body, and the spiritual body, that they are all part of the same elixir that makes us who we are. Are you ready to rewrite the story your body's been carrying? Rebel Remembered is a transformational journey for every woman who's felt disconnected, silenced, or weighed down by period pain, fertility challenges, or the shifting tides of perimenopause and menopause. Led by the reproductive rebel, Adrienne Irizarry, this program weaves together goddess archetypes, body literacy, and the ancient healing art of sound. Here, you will find freedom in your body, reclaim joy, and release the intergenerational trauma that no longer serves you. Sister, it is time to remember your strength. Join Rebel Remembered and awaken the rebel within. Information about joining this transformational program is in the show notes. And now, back to the show. So, the reason I want to talk about this is PMS gets a bad rap, and we kind of assume that PMS is just a given with our cycle, but it actually is, one of the things that I talk to people about and I ask questions about, are you seeing any emotional symptoms before your period starts? How long before your period starts do you start to see them? I ask these kinds of questions because it gives me an idea of what's happening in the physical body. So, I very much look at the emotional body and the physical body as equally important in the overall solving of reproductive health challenges. So, why is it that I might ask some of these questions? Well, according to traditional Chinese medicine, the liver regulates the flow of our emotions, our energy or our qi, and our blood. So when I say liver, most people think lowercase l, liver, the way that you might find it in a medical textbook. But Chinese medicine puts an uppercase letter in front of it because they understand, and it's a way to demarcate the difference between just the physiological functions of the liver and the fact that traditional Chinese medicine recognizes it as having more functions than just the ones that are associated with it according to Western literature. So, the liver is really a miraculous organ in the body. And in traditional Chinese medicine, it's called the commander general of the body because it regulates our vital chi, blood, and emotions. It is the main organ of detoxification. And, it filters everything from pharmaceuticals that we take, food, emotions, etc. The liver is one of the most important organs in a woman's body because it closely works with the reproductive system and it stores the blood and is responsible for some of the functions of menstruation. So, your liver, when it is out of balance, the emotions associated with it are irritability, frustration, and anger. Now, if you think about it, with women, we typically are raised in an environment where it is more socially acceptable to cry because that's a feminine emotion, or it's one that socially we have assigned as feminine, but it is not acceptable to be angry. And because of this, it affects not only the expression of menstruation, but how it affects not only the expression of menstruation, the liver not only shows signs of imbalance when we are stressed because liver chi, okay, so liver energy, stagnation, meaning things getting stuck, it is the root cause of many imbalances in the system. So, liver energy is really important, and the free flow of liver energy is very important to not have PMS, to have fewer symptoms with the actual bleed itself, and for your overall emotional well being. So, stress doesn't have to be negative stress. This could be things that are positive, like honeymoons and weddings and moving to your dream house. Like, it doesn't have to be a bad thing. But whenever we have a stressor that hits our system, it can cause some level of, or it is an expression of, liver qi stagnation. So, if the liver plays such an important role in our menstrual cycle and on our emotional well being, it's important to acknowledge our emotional body. So, like I was saying, socially, we accept women crying, but we don't always socially accept, at least in Western culture, angry women. And this comes to full circle when you come into your perimenopausal years because bottling how you feel about things, maybe it's to keep the peace, Maybe it's because you don't want to start a fight with your partner in front of your kids. Maybe it's because you're super busy and things just keep getting stacked on your plate and you feel like you're doing them all alone. Whatever it is, it comes to a head when you hit perimenopause. And when that happens, we see mood things as a symptom of part of perimenopausal journey because your body just gets to a point where, if you think about when you move into this phase of your life, like you give way less of a shit what anybody thinks about how you dress, what you think. You are very much more secure with who you are as a person, and you are much freer with sharing who you are as a person and not trying to people please, right? I mean, that's one of the most beautiful gifts I feel like my late 30s and early 40s has given me is that I really don't give a fuck. Like people who love me and connect with me and resonate with me are going to do that because I'm an authentic version of myself. I am no longer trying to be something that I'm not. I'm not trying to make anybody else happy. I'm here to live my life in the best possible way with as much joy in my heart as possible. And how I live my life is going to resonate with some people and it's not going to with others. And that's okay. My vibe attracts my tribe, right? So I know that's a really kitschy saying, but it's really true. So, when we start living with more authenticity and more vulnerability, we sometimes have relationships end. We sometimes have things we've been trying to protect by being something that we're not dissolve or change. But it's because we're actually coming into a healthier relationship with who we are, what we want, and we're being more truthful and having more courage and strength to just be who we are. And that is what brings about health, being in right relationship with oneself. But when we do not honor our emotional body, meaning that we feel big things about something and we stuff them down inside of our body for the good of the people and don't express them, because like there are ways that you can express yourself that aren't going to be harmful to other people. You could be raging pissed about something and say, I feel angry because that is a healthy expression of anger. I feel sad because I feel frustrated, and this is why. These are healthy expressions of our emotions, and we're totally entitled to our emotions. But nobody makes us feel certain things. We're the ones that filter that kind of information. And when we aren't authentic and true to our emotional body and what's happening and why we feel the way we feel about certain things, and we don't express our frustrations, our fears, our anxieties, our whatever, because we're afraid how that might make us look, or we don't feel like we have safe spaces to express that in, it makes us sick. So I think about women who experience vaginismus, for example. A lot of times they are just not in an aligned place, the partner that they are with. And if it's not the partner, there's something about the situation that makes them not feel safe. Whatever that is, it could be subconscious, it could be overt, but the body is literally guarding itself. It's locking itself down. It's shutting things out. It's closing the doors so that it is not allowing anything unsafe inside. We as female bodies are built as receptors. We have to feel safe and held in order to allow the vulnerability of a partner to penetrate us emotionally and physically. And when we are not able to be true with our emotions, then it causes physical symptoms. So I'm really excited about this program that I'm offering called Rebel Remembered because it is a new spin. It is taking this kind of work in the direction that I've wanted to go for a long time. Because as I've worked with women for closing in on a decade now, the things that are consistent to me is that there is a loss of voice associated with certain types of period problems and fibroids and vaginismus. There are certain emotions or feelings around self-worth or, feelings around the safety of authentically expressing oneself that manifest themselves as physical symptoms in the body. And we did talk about this, Dr. Emily Wilson and I, when we were talking about how things show up in the pelvis. But this is like overall whole body health. When people are having recurrent headaches, how those headaches are showing up, where people feel anxiety physically in their body. Is it in their chest or is it in their stomach? All of these physical symptoms tell the story about the emotional state, the emotional body, whether someone feels safe in their body or in expressing their truest and deepest desires. Has somebody lost touch with being able to play, with their creative energy, with the things that bring them home to their essence self? We know who that person is. When we are a kid, we know our essence self. That's why we're attracted to certain things and we like to play with mud and jump in puddles because it brings our heart joy, right? Kids live for things like that. And when we are young, we know what makes us happy, who we are. This is when, you've got the kid that busts out at the grocery store. Why does that person have a big nose or something like that, right? These are things that we think, but we filter as adults. Kids just let that stuff fly, but they also are more true to their emotions. When they are feeling frustrated, they show it. As we get older, we suppress it or we try to suppress it. Like, I've seen t-shirts that are something to the effect of, like, "My interior monologue comes out on my face," right? Some people have a hard time holding that stuff inside, and they wear everything on their sleeve, but that is not the vast majority of us, and honestly, it's far more healthy to find healthy ways to express these things, right? Obviously, you don't wanna do harm to others, so if you have questions about somebody's physical appearance, find a tactful way of putting it, but you know what I'm saying. Like, it's all about being able to authentically voice and express yourself. And that is one of those things that really early on I started seeing this connection as a practitioner. And I really think at this point in my career that I've done more to unravel fertility challenges, perimenopausal symptoms, all of those things by working through emotions. Sometimes it looks like my one-on-one appointments with people were just literally shooting the shit about, what's going on in your life, where are your frustrations, how are your kids doing, all that kind of stuff. But really what I'm getting at through that conversation is, where are we feeling stress? What emotions are coming up? Because as we have this open, authentic dialogue, like, people share things with me that they don't share with other people. They don't feel comfortable sharing with other people. Sometimes they're really shocked that they open up about certain things, but it is part of the healing process. And they do see their cycles changing as they voice their needs, their wants, their desires, the things that they wish they were still doing that they stopped doing because they realized when people were talking about hobbies that they no longer have one because they have essentially sacrificed themselves on the altar of motherhood martyrdom. Ooh, how much does that land with some people? I don't know about you, but I had a period of time like that. as I was starting this work where I realized I didn't have hobbies anymore. I used to sit and crochet. I used to make up little songs. I used to have a soundtrack playing in my head all the time. And those things had gone quiet because I never prioritized myself. I always had something to do. I always had a kid that had to go somewhere. There was always a mess to be picked up. There was always clutter on the counter. Go, 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 go. We always had to go to something for someone. It was always for other people. And I realized that that was what was making me sick. And as I started doing something that brought my heart joy, and I started playing more with my kids instead of worrying about the messes that they were creating. I mean, did I clean up? Do I live in a I know. But we made a game out of cleaning things up. And, like my daughter, when she was 2, she'd have toys all over the living room. And I'd start singing a song with her and I'd be like, okay, now it's time to clean up. Right. And we would make it a game. And she would run around the living room, 2.5 years old, and she would pick up her toys and she would make a big gesture as she would put them in the little laundry basket that I had underneath the coffee table to keep all of her toys together in so they weren't all over the floor. So there are ways that you can play and still get all the things that you need to get done. But, your kids are only little for a period of time. You're only here in this life for a fixed amount of time. And we spend so much of that time giving too much of a shit what anyone else thinks, that our house doesn't look like a Better Homes and Gardens magazine, that we're supposed to go to this event and that event and this other event, and gosh, I'm so tired, but I'm just gonna push myself through it anyway. We need to set healthy boundaries around creating sacred space for ourselves. Maybe this sacred space is having an uninterrupted cup of hot coffee before the chaos begins in the morning. Maybe you wake up and you open the curtains so you're getting daylight in and you just meditate for 5 or 10 minutes. Like, it doesn't have to be a day at the spa. Is a day at a spa nice? Hell yeah, it is. Do we get to do that on a regular basis? No. Sometimes it's financial, sometimes it's time related. Little ways that you can steal sacred space for you. Maybe you sit and you pull oracle cards. Maybe you sit and you steam, and that's your sacred space time. I know I have clients that set up a corner in a room as their little sanctuary, and they tell their partner to essentially guard that space with their life and keep the kids entertained until they emerge, and they sit and they journal or they sit and they read while they steam because they enjoy reading, but they never have time to pick up a book. I know I was in that camp for a long time. I loved to read prior to graduate school. That kinda broke my reading button a little bit, but I found that reading for the sheer joy of reading was just not in the cards because there was always something someone needed. And that's what I started doing with my sacred space. I would open the curtains so that the windows let light in first thing in the morning, and I would sit, and even if it was just 5 or 6 pages, I would read 5 or 6 pages of a book, and yes, I'm old, and I like the feeling of the paper book in my hand. And I would sit and I would read even just a few pages, and then I would do a little bit of meditative breath work, and then I would go about whatever I had to do for the day. And starting that way allowed me to check in with my emotional body. Sometimes during that meditative time, I would put my hands over my heart and I would get really still in my body and try to turn my brain off from the laundry list of shit that I had to do that day. Reminders on my phone are amazing because I keep a checklist in there. So if I think of something, I put it there to help clear my mind. Because when you're busy going, oh God, I can't forget this or I can't forget that, right? It keeps your brain not present in the moment. So I would sit there and try to clear my mind. I'd put my hands over my heart and I would ask her, "How do you feel today? What do you need today?" And some days I felt happy and my mind was met with joy. There were days where I felt worried because something big was coming up, or we were dealing with a big family household problem, or whatever. And then I knew going into my day where my awareness is of my emotional state so that when I work with other people, I can separate how I feel from how they're feeling. Because sometimes, because we're really sensitive to energy and emotions as women, our intuition is our superpower. We can sometimes project that we're having a really grouchy day, but maybe we're actually absorbing that grouch from somebody around us. Have you ever thought about that? I never, ever thought about that for a long, long time. And when I started doing this little sacred space exercise in the morning, I started realizing if my husband came home frustrated with something, whatever it was, and he walked in the door holding his own frustration, I would start to feel tense and agitated, and I would assume he was irritated with me. And I came to realize that that's actually not the case. And when I was able to finally separate how I was feeling, I could tell that it was his irritation that walked through the door and that it wasn't in my own body. And then I was actually able to show up as a better partner and say, "Hey, babe, are you having a bad day? Did something happen at work? Why are you feeling frustrated? I can feel that you feel frustrated. How can I help you? How can I show up for you?" And that really changed the dynamic in our relationship. So, creating sacred time for yourself, whatever that looks like, helps not only the regulation of your emotional body, it also helps you show up in your life in a more meaningful way. It helps to reduce symptoms in your cycle, in perimenopause, in menopause. It doesn't matter. It reduces your symptoms because you are creating space and honoring and naming your emotions, and it helps you to advocate for what it is that you need. So I'm so excited about Rebel Remembered because it speaks to this emotional body and the spiritual body. We're going to talk about creating sacred space. We're going to talk about advocating for your emotions. We're going to do it through the lens of goddess archetypes. I'm going to bring sound healing into it. We're going to have deepening practices where you're going to create that sacred time for you. And this has been where I've wanted to take my work for a very long time, and I'm so excited to finally be able to bring this offering to you. So, information about Rebel Remembered is in the show notes. So please take a look, check it out. We're going to open with a sound bath ceremony on January 13th, which I'm really excited about. It's going to be all the juicy, emotional, spiritual, healing the physical stuff that I've wanted to do with my work for a long time. So, if you've been following this program, if you are curious about dipping your toe in the waters of maybe I'm not ready for one-on-one work, Adrian, but I would love to see how you do work, or I would love to take the plunge and really see how supporting true holistic health can affect the way that my cycle shows up. You'll want to join us for Rebel Remembered. It'll be a community to share so that you have mental health support as well as supporting your physical and energetic body.